Hey everyone, welcome to the Investor.Bet NRL Finals Week 1 betting preview. In this video, I'm going to run through all 4 games of the Week 1 of the finals, go through who I think is going to win and why, and what I'm considering betting on in each of these matches. This is something we've done all season long. I'm going to keep it going right through the finals to help make sure that your betting decisions on each of these matches are backed by the statistics and information that you need to make informed betting decisions. So we're going to run through all 4 games, the 2 qualifying finals, and then the 2 elimination finals starting on Friday night. But before we get to those games, I want to quickly recap what happened in the final round of the season. We had a number of really high scoring games. 5 of the 8 games went over the total points line. All the top 4 teams were able to win their final game of the home and away season. And then we had that battle for home elimination final between the Bulldogs and Cowboys. Cowboys running out big winners in that game. Then the battle for 8th spot. Initially, when the Raiders overran the Dragons, who got off to a good start as we predicted. Then later in the round on Sunday afternoon, we had the final game between the Knights and the Dolphins, which I thought was going to be a close game with potentially the Dolphins getting over the line. However, Newcastle were too good at home, winning 14-6. Bit of controversy in that game as well to end the season. Away teams were really successful in the final round. They covered 6 of the 8 games. The only 2 home teams to cover were the Rabbitohs, who covered the big spread against the Roosters, and then the Knights covering the spread against the Dolphins. Away teams also won 6 of the 8 games. Underdogs covered 5 of the 8 games, so good week for the underdogs. The only favorites to cover were the Storm, who covered against the Brisbane Broncos 50-12. The Eels covered against the Tigers, another big win. And then Newcastle covering against the Dolphins. 3 underdogs won outright. They were Canberra, then the Cowboys as an underdog against the Bulldogs, and then Sharks as the underdog against the Seagulls. From a betting perspective, last week's NRL was really, really good. I'm looking to keep that running into the finals. Also, if you watched the try score video last week, we hit a large number of those try scores, and there's going to be a video coming out on Thursday with all the try score predictions for the finals game. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the notification when that comes out. We're going for 6 consecutive winning weeks on our try scorers, and last week was our biggest week yet. So the games coming up this weekend, we'll quickly overview them. The Panthers versus Roosters, 2nd versus 3rd. The winner of this game will go through a preliminary final, and then the loser of this match gets a second chance, and they'll play the winner of an elimination game between the Canterbury Bulldogs and Manly Seagulls. Then the other qualifying final, 1st versus 4th, between the Storm and Sharks. The winner goes through to a prelim final, and the loser of that game gets a second chance playing the winner of the Cowboys versus Knights. So that's what's going to be happening over the next 4 weeks, lead and going through to the grand final. So the first game, the Panthers versus Roosters. A few weeks ago, before the injuries to the Roosters, this was setting up to be a really, really good game, and I was expecting it to be about $1.90 either side. But with those injuries to the Roosters, they're severely undermanned coming into this game. Panthers pretty big favorites for a final, -7.5, $1.44, and the total at 40.5 points. Looking at the lineups for this game, Penrith bring Nathan Cleary back into the team, and then that's the big in for them. And for the Roosters, they bring back a few of the players. They rested Tupou and Young, then also Collins and Butcher are the other main ins who are all rested for last weekend's game against South Sydney. How these sides come into the finals. Penrith haven't been in the greatest form. They've won 2 of their past 4, the 2 wins against Gold Coast and South Sydney, and they, really didn't make a statement last week against Gold Coast. Like, Gold Coast were right in that game pretty much until the end. Gold Coast led 6-4 at halftime, kind of just kept on hanging around. So, Penrith, I feel like this year haven't been as dominant as we've seen in previous seasons. And then the Roosters dropped the game to Canberra a couple of weeks ago, but outside of that have won 5 of their past 6, so coming in pretty good form. Roosters, as we've spoken about this season, are the #1 attacking side. They average just over 30 points a game, and they're going up against the best defensive side in the Penrith Panthers. And if you watched my videos right back at the beginning of the season, you would have heard me talk about how at this time of year, it's defense that wins finals. Like the better defensive sides are the ones that step up and win these games. So you always want to err on that side of who's the better defensive side. And in this case, it's definitely Penrith. And whether the Roosters attack is going to be as dynamic without Walker and Smith in the side. Looking at the history between these two sides, Penrith have covered 6 of the past 7 versus the Sydney Roosters. And Penrith have also won the last 9 straight against the Roosters, going back to round 1, 2020, which covers the past 5 seasons, including this one. They last met in round 4 this season, with the Roosters being 4.5-point favorites and Penrith running out underdog winners, 22 points to 16. Prior to that, 30-6 to the Panthers, 48-4. So Penrith do have like a really good record in this game, and I do expect them to be winning. Especially with Cleary back in the team, I think that's going to help their attack. We already know they are the best defensive side, and I do kind of get the feeling they might want to make a bit of a statement in this game. And going against a Rooster side who is undermanned, not that great of a defensive side, I feel like can be a little bit exposed here against the Roosters. So on the line, I'd be leaning towards Penrith to cover. Feel like if I had to take a side, that's the way I'd be going. I definitely think Penrith win this game. I don't really see, I feel like it'd be a major upset for the Roosters to win this match, just with everything that's going on. And Penrith will put their themselves through to a prelim final. Just it's pretty much worked out absolutely perfect for them. Like they haven't had, as dominant of a season as we've seen in previous years. Defensively, I guess you could say they have, but not as much. So in overall terms, but obviously due to injuries and stuff throughout the season. But I think now's the time where they step up. Still don't think like they're definitely not the number 1 seed to be winning the premiership, but I think they take care of the Roosters here and probably cover that number. The other angle that I feel like is a pretty strong way of going in this game is looking at the Roosters team total to go under. Now, the current line for this is 16.5, which I do feel like is kind of at rock bottom, but finals matches are generally lower scoring. You look at all the total lines for this weekend's games, they're all just above 40, whereas over the past few months during the regular season, most of the totals were around the 50 mark. That's a pretty big difference, especially since we've been seeing a lot of games go over the totals this year. However, I do think the Roosters will struggle to score, so you could play something along the lines of Penrith winning, Roosters scoring under 20, 22 points, that kind of thing. Their past 5 games, they've failed to clear that number. The highest score they've had was 18 points in round 16, 2022. So those are my thoughts on the opening game. Definitely think Penrith progress through to a prelim, and then Roosters will take on the winner of the Bulldogs-Seagulls game. Next game on Saturday afternoon, the early game, Melbourne Storm at home to the Cronulla Sharks. Melbourne minus 9.5-point favorites here, $1.31. Total 44.5 for this game. These sides met in round 10 this season, and the Sharks won that game 25-18 as 6.5-point underdogs. They paid $2.95 on the money line to win. And the Sharks have won 2 of the past 3 versus Melbourne. So it's not crazy to believe that they are somewhat of a chance to be winning this game. Melbourne obviously come into this game in really, really red hot form. They've won 4 of their past 5. The only game they lost was when they rested the majority of their team against the Cowboys, but still put up 30 points in that game. They did drop a game in round 22 at home against the Dragons. So it's not like they're unbeatable at home, and do give the Sharks like a small chance if they play at their best. They're pretty much back to full strength now with their current lineup. Nico Hines back into the team, so the half pairings back together. The Storm also a side that are pretty close to full strength. Pappenhausen comes back into the side. So both sides really strong, have pretty much their best teams on the park for this game. Looking at how they match up, the Storm, the number 2 attacking side, the Sharks, number 5, and then defensively, Storm ranked 3rd, and the Sharks ranked 5th. Now, there has been some kind of like defensive issues with the Storm this season. They haven't been super dominant defensively. Like a number of sides have been consistently scoring like that 16-18 points against them, and even bad sides where you wouldn't really expect it. And the Sharks come into this game like in pretty good attacking form. They put up 40 last week against the Manly Seagulls, which we scroll across here. Manly are the 7th best defensive side, so they're not, super strong, but they're not, terrible. So 40 against them, 28 against the Warriors. The majority of that came in the first half. 38 against the Dragons, 19 against Newcastle, 44 against the Gold Coast. That's their past 5 weeks leading it. So, not they're in really, really good attacking form, and if they can put it together, then they are a chance. Now, with the line at -9.5 for the Storm, I'd be leaning towards the Sharks to cover if I could get +10.5. Currently, like that -9.5 is juiced in favor of that, so it's looking like that line may increase and go into the double digits. So that's what I'm looking for it to do. I do think the Sharks can keep this game somewhat close. Storm have covered 4 of the past 6 versus the Sharks, and the home team does have a good record, covering 8 of the past 10 and winning 7 of the past 10. So you could also look at like the Storm 1-12 as a potential option in this game, or either side to win by 1-12. I feel like any of those options are good. I feel like this is going to be a 4 to 8 point game. Either way, the Sharks could scrape out a win by 1 or 2 points, or the Storm could win, by that 4 to 8. I don't really see it being a massive blowout and being a 20-30 point game as we've seen the Storm doing to a few of the lower sides. I feel like Cronulla can hang around in this game and keep it really close. It's a game that kind of, suits the Sharks when, it's a bit more low scoring, close margins. That's where they tend to play that a little bit better. The total is currently 44.5. 6 of the past 9 between these two sides have gone over. At that number, I'd slightly be leaning towards the over. I would prefer a slightly lower number, more so the 42.5, 41.5, and definitely play the over. Don't think it's going to drop down that low. Right now I'm looking at it's actually moved up since Monday up to the 45.5. So don't think I'm going to have a play in the over. I do, however, think it'll get pretty close to that number regardless. So I wouldn't probably talk you out of playing an over. Just looking at their previous meeting, so the meeting earlier this season, this was the game where the Sharks were missing key players. So if we look through, Atkinson filling in at 5'8" for the Sharks, and then also Blake Brayley playing halfback in this game. So they were without, their Trindle and Nico Hines, their 2 main halves. Storm were without Jerome Hughes, so both teams were missing key players. Sharks probably slightly more. Pappenhausen was also out for the Storm, just focusing on the spine of both sides. But yeah, so the Sharks getting over the line in that game gives me that little bit of confidence that they can definitely keep this, within a double-digit margin. I do feel like that, -9.5, kind of 10 range has been slightly inflated to the Storms. Big win against the Brisbane Broncos, who, after losing to the Dolphins a week prior, like we just knew Brisbane were going to shut up shop and not, really turn up at all in that Thursday night game against the Storm. So that's my thoughts on that game. Now into the elimination finals. Cowboys against the Knights. North Queensland, $1.44, -6.5 points. Total for this game, 42.5. The Cowboys have won the past 3 versus Newcastle, but Newcastle have covered the spread in the past 2 as +3.5 and +6.5. Home team has won the last 11 games between these two sides. So a big advantage for the Cowboys getting this home final, and the home team has covered 13 of the past 17. Both sides come into this in really good form. Cowboys have won 6 of their past 7, the only loss against the Brisbane Broncos, and coming off a big win against the Bulldogs, putting up 44 points against one of the top 2 defensive sides. A really good achievement leading in. And then the Knights grinding out a few wins against the Rabbitohs and Gold Coast, and then Dolphins last week in a low-scoring game. This is a really, really interesting game. There's a few angles I feel like you can take from a betting perspective. Cowboys have been a massive overside. If you look through their scoring, they're pretty much scoring 30+ points in every single game. We've got a 42.5 point total, so straight away I'm leaning towards that going over, even though the Knights aren't the best attacking side we've seen, recently against potentially lesser defensive sides. They are able to put up points. They're only like average defensive sides, both sides. So Newcastle scoring has been better. They had 36 against South and the Gold Coast, and then also 34 against the West Tigers, over the past 6 weeks or so. So I do think, this could verge on a slightly higher scoring game, and the Cowboys generally do concede points. They've had a couple of games where teams have struggled to score against them. Just pretty much Canberra, really, to be honest, and the Bulldogs last week. Bulldogs aren't the best attacking side, but the Bulldogs weren't really in that great attacking form leading into that and were without Matt Burton. So, yeah, leaning towards the over firstly for the Cowboys. Nice. And then from a side perspective, the Cowboys winning the past three. The past two that they've won were by 1 point and then by 2 points. But just feel like with the current form North Queensland is, they can win this game and win it really comfortably. With the spread at -6.5, I feel like it's a little bit risky though. Like Newcastle do have a habit of hanging around in games and, in their own right are in good form leading into it. Their past 5 weeks has been, worthy of securing a spot in the top eight. But whether they can go up to Townsville and win this game is another step. A lot of those wins coming against sides who haven't made the finals. Looking back through, struggling actually to find a spot where they have beaten a top eight side. They beat the Melbourne Storm in round 3. That was the only time they beat a top eight side. Realistically, like against this opposition, Cowboys should be too good. They just need to hold their form that they've been playing in over the past few weeks. So definitely like the Cowboys to win. Not super keen on the -6.5, but I think they get the win on the board. Very similar to Penrith. Like it'd be very surprising for North Queensland to drop this game. And so they should progress and go through to play most likely the Sharks or, potentially the Storm next week. And then the Knights will be eliminated. And then the Bulldogs versus the Eagles. So on Sunday, this is the final elimination final. Bulldogs, $1.81, 1.5 point favorites for this game. Total 43.5. These sides only met 2 weeks ago with the Seagulls running out 34-22 winners. Now they meet again in elimination final. For that game, the Bulldogs were 3.5 point favorites. And Manly with around $2.30 on the money line. Now this time around, the odds have contracted. The Bulldogs are only 1.5 point favorites at home this time, and total at 43.5. It's not often like you get such a recent reference for a head-to-head matchup, but that's what we get in this case. So you can kind of see just how the odds have moved since that game. Manly winning, so brings it a little bit closer. Bulldogs really getting hammered last week. The Seagulls, both sides, like Tom Trbojevic missing from the Seagulls and Matt Burton from the Bulldogs were two major outs, so you can kind of forgive both of their performances last week. Can forgive Seagulls' performance a little bit more than I can the Bulldogs. Manly have a very, very good record here against the Bulldogs. They've won 10 of the past 11. The Bulldogs only win was by 1 point in round 25, 2022, where they won 21-20 as a $1.45 favorite. Manly still covered the spread in that game, and they've covered the past 4, and the away side has covered 7 of the past 8. So kind of like everywhere you look at it, it favors the Seagulls to be winning and covering this game. Both sides coming into this off losses. Seagulls losing 20 points to 40 against the Sharks, and the Bulldogs losing 6 points to 44 against the Cowboys. The lineups are out for this game. Tom Trbojevic comes back in for Manly, which is major in for them, and then Matt Burton back into the lineup. Bronson Cherry also back into the centers for the Bulldogs this week. For my bets on this game, I'm definitely leaning towards Manly as the underdog. I definitely think they should be favorites for this matchup. Bulldogs have also had plenty of issues and whatnot in the media this week around Josh Addo-Carr, and I think the Seagulls clearly should be favorites. Looking at how they match up in attack and defense, Seagulls clearly the better attacking side, ranked 4th in points for compared to the Bulldogs 11th, and then also meters per point ranked 4th compared to the Bulldogs 12th in that category. Defensively, the Bulldogs are the slightly better side. However, as we just mentioned, they conceded 34 against the Seagulls a couple of weeks ago and then 44 last week against the Cowboys. So, it has been seen like teams are now starting to score against them. So can that defense actually bounce back is the question, especially under so much pressure. For those reasons, I'm more than likely be backing Manly to be winning this game outright. From a total at 43.5, 10 of the past 15 head-to-head have gone under. There's kind of a few ways you can play it. I am slightly leaning towards the over for this game. Feel like Manly are capable of running up a score, but I definitely prefer the side like taking Manly to be winning as opposed to playing a total. I feel like, these 4 finals, the totals are kind of accurate. They're all maybe like 1 to 2 points either way, where I feel like there'd be an edge. However, I feel like there's a lot of edges with the sides that are worth backing. So Panthers versus Roosters, like Penrith, to get the job done. I think Roosters are going to struggle to score. Penrith's defense is going to step up and they get Cleary back into the team. Storm versus Sharks. I think if we can get double-digit line about the Sharks, they can cover that and slightly lean towards the over. Cowboys versus Knights. Definitely like Cowboys to be winning this game and also it to be a higher scoring game. And Bulldogs versus Seagulls, like the Seagulls as an underdog here and slightly lean towards the over, but probably prefer the over in the Cowboys Knights if I had to compare the two. So that's how I'm looking at playing the games this weekend. If you're following along, good luck. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, the try scorer video where we go through all the try scorer trends, who's going to score a try and my predictions for that. That'll be out on Thursday morning, so make sure you don't miss that as soon as it's posted. Tune in. Across last weekend's games, we hit 9 of the 13 selections. Probably not going to have that many this week, as I spoke about. Like with the lower totals, the games are expected to be slightly lower scoring, but we're still going to follow those same processes to pick which players we want to back. If you want to get all my bets, you can get them with the bet finders. I'll put them in the descriptions. That's where, this week we're betting on the NRL and the AFL. Also in the finals, we got American football that started off just this weekend past, and then betting every day on the Major League Baseball using like the exact same processes and that I talk about in these videos. We go through with the statistics and go through, the trends, etc. Who's been winning, who's been covering, how teams have been performing, is their offense firing, is their defense struggling, all that kind of stuff, and then go through, look for the player props where the edges are. I'll also be posting NFL videos starting on Sunday, so make sure you subscribe to the US Sports channel if you're interested in betting on the NFL. And the only other thing is, I decided this week I'm going to be putting together an NRL betting guide for the 2025 season. So I know it's a bit far in the future right now. We're still focused on this year, but I wanted to let you guys know. I'll put a link in the description of this video where you can go through, put in your email address. That's all you got to do. And then about a month before the 2025 season kicks off, so, early February, you'll get an email with the NRL betting guide with a stack of information that you can use to make money betting next season on the NRL. Right now, though, let's finish this season strong. I really appreciate you guys watching, tuning in throughout the season. Let me know any bets you're taking in the comments underneath this video, and so everyone can cheer them on for you as well. And let's end this season strong. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the try scorer video coming up soon.